beautiful, isn't it?
Phase 4 is bound to be a major turning point for the MCU, with Black Widow finally getting her own solo movie. Natalie Portman's Jane Foster is set to succeed Mjolnir from Chris Hemsworth in Thor: Love and Thunder, and many character favorites making the transition of star characters on Disney Plus exclusive series. However, the movie that is bound to make the biggest splash in the MCU is Eternals. Don't go anywhere, because we are going to break down everything there is to be known about Eternals and their abnormal superpowers. Before we continue, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell to always be updated. Here we go. As it was put by Richard Madden at Comic-Con, the Eternals are a race of immortal aliens that were sent to Earth by the Celestials to protect people from the Deviants. Now, for anyone unfamiliar with Marvel Comics and their mythology, that's just a bunch of terms with no context. Before getting deeper into the reasons I can't wait for the release of this movie, let me give you an attempt at some brief explanations. Celestials. The Celestials are cosmic beings that are tightly linked to the beginning of the universe. In the comics, the Celestials were deeply involved in humanity's early development and were responsible for the creation of the Eternals, the Deviants, and the Mutant X gene. We've met a Celestial in the MCU before. Ego, the living planet, and Peter Quill's father. Eternals. Eons ago, the Celestials created the Eternals on Earth through genetic manipulations for an unknown cosmic reason. The Eternals act as mankind's prime defense against their genetically unstable and violent counterparts, the Deviants. The Deviants were also created by the Celestials in a very similar way the Eternals were. However, they are genetically unstable. A fun fact, Thanos is an Eternal of Titan with a mutant deviant gene. Alright, so we hope we didn't lose you on this one. It's quite an epic bunch of heroes and villains, but wait until you hear about their superpowers. The Eternals look just like humans, as was evident in the trailer. What sets them apart were their extraordinary powers. All Eternals are functionally immortal, with their heightened physiology aging them very slowly. All of the main Eternals cast have been alive from the dawn of man into the present day. They're also incredibly strong and durable, though there is often significant variation among them individually. Some of them have unique powers that would rank them amongst the strongest superheroes in the Marvel Universe. A large and diverse ensemble cast. As much as I love smaller movies with contained stories, I have always been a fan of large ensemble casts. It's exciting to see how a group of people, or in this case immortals, work together and how relationships and power dynamics evolve between them. But not just does the Eternals grace us with a fantastic group of actors, Angelina Jolie, Salma Hayek, Kumail Nanjiani, Richard Madden, Lauren Ridloff, everybody in this movie. It's also a definite sign of what the MCU is going to look like going forward. Long gone are the days of 6 white Avengers, 5 of them male. It goes without saying that they were still all great characters, of course. Eternals invites everyone to feel included and empowered, and sets us on a path on which hopefully one day diversity will be so much of a given that it won't have to be pointed out anymore. Potentially a fantasy historical epic spanning thousands of years. So we have an incredibly talented and fantastically diverse cast. What about the actual plot? Well, we don't know that much about that yet, but what we do know is that the Eternals draw a lot of inspiration from Greek mythology, and that the movie, which is essentially a kind of origin story for the species, could span hundreds or even thousands of years. With a mythological element to it, a true ensemble cast, and an epic time span, my mind keeps flashing towards a Lord of the Rings kind of atmosphere, with plenty of beautiful shots and an epic score. Expect some history nuggets too, for our own history and that of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. If there's anyone who's been around for all of it, it's the Eternals. We might get some backstory on Thanos. Thena, one of the Eternals who will be played by Angelina Jolie, has a very famous MCU cousin, Thanos himself. As mentioned already, Thanos is an Eternal Titan. Specifically, he's an Eternal with a mutant deviant gene. It might be a bit of a stretch to suggest that he could make an appearance in the movie, although if it's going to span over thousands of years, why not? There is one thing that is for certain. We'll be getting some context on who Thanos was and what race he belonged to. And who knows, maybe we'll even go back to Infinity War and see him in a different light. In the comics, Thanos' mother, Sui San, attempts to kill him, shocked by his appearance and the belief that as a mutant deviant, he would destroy all life in the universe. But she was stopped by Lars, Thanos' father. During his school years, Thanos was a pacifist. Kind of ironic, huh? Until he fell in love with Mistress Death, the physical embodiment of death. Thanos' story has already played out differently in the MCU than it has in the comics, but could we get a hint of any of this in Eternals? Anything is possible. Back to 1976, the comics. Thanos may be the only Eternal we've seen on screen, but Eternals have a comic history that stretches back to 1976. They were dreamed up by Jack Kirby, co-creator of the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, and the X-Men, after he created a very similar New Gods for DC 6 years earlier. In the comics, they're an evolutionary offshoot of humanity living on Earth who possess greater powers and have longer lifespans. The Celestials, a group of space gods, created them to defend Earth. The current series from writer Kieran Gillen and artist Esad Ribic kicked off in January of 2021. The basic idea of the Eternals stems from Kirby's interest in grand sci-fi ideas, especially those that supposed an alien influence in the development of early man. The story of the Eternals begins when the Celestials, among the most powerful Marvel cosmic beings, dabble in the evolution of early humanity. They eventually develop three distinct races: the Eternals, a higher life form, the Deviants, a lower one who are essentially genetic cast-offs of the Eternals, and finally, mankind. All of this happened millions of years in the past. In the beginning, the Eternals' genetic superiority is described as a mutation. This makes them very similar to the X-Men and the X gene. The two are different, however. Homo superior is a new branch of human evolution distinct from Homo immortalis, which includes the Eternals. The two groups do share some similarities, particularly in recent comics. The Eternals were recently rebooted in Marvel Comics, and revelations in the new story appear to echo some elements of the current Dawn of X era, of X-Men and the resurrection protocols that mutants now use to cheat death. The Eternals were imagined for the 2006 Eternal series by Neil Gaiman and artist John Romita Jr., particularly in their power set. Their cosmic powers were limited, and they appear now to be less genetic experiments with their own free will, but programmable clones. The Eternals can't attack the Celestials or even disagree with them in some cases. If an Eternal makes any antagonistic move against their creators, they are immediately switched off like they were robots. It remains to be seen if the movie will keep to this concept or the original Kirby one. It could set up an entire new path for the MCU. As I've mentioned before, the Eternals already have ties into the MCU through Ego and Thanos. However, there is one more connection that might or might not be made in the movies. In the comics, the Celestials also created the shape-shifting Skrulls that we met in Captain Marvel. We have since very recently found out that Nick Fury has been working with them ever since, or to be exact, they have been working as Nick Fury. It's difficult to believe that we'd get that revealed just before Phase 4 for no reason. Will the Skrulls show up in Eternals, or will both races interact in the future of the multiverse? We live in exciting times, my friends. In general, Eternals open a door to a whole new aspect of the MCU's mythology, especially paired with the very promising title of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. This promises to delve into more straight-up weird comic storylines, and I'm all here for it. It's going to be weird. The Eternals were originally created by Jack Kirby, who has been described the superhero of style. His artwork described by John Carlin in Masters of American Comics as deliberately primitive and bombastic, while also being referred to as cubist, futurist, primitivist, and outsider art. He helped create several of Marvel's most successful and well-loved characters, and has been known throughout for having a very distinctive style. If Eternals is anything like the comics it's based on, it's gonna be weird. What do you think about this? Do you have a favorite Eternal yet? What are your thoughts on the characters and the storyline of this brand new Marvel Cinematic Universe phase? Is Kevin Feige going in the right direction? Be sure to share this video, don't forget to smash that like and subscribe button, and ring that notification bell to be notified first when a new cool video like this comes out. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.